An unidentified ally of former Iranian President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani stated that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has terminal leukemia and is expected to die in months, and Rafsanjani's unwillingness to act after the disputed presidential election in 2009 comes from his wish to succeed Khamenei and annul Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's election afterwards. Reports that the Iranian Red Crescent was actively controlled by the government and was involved in illicit arms smuggling and intelligence gathering on behalf of Iran. A cable from the U.S. State Department indicated that the U.S. was pushing for cooperation from its allies to impose further sanctions on Iran in response to its nuclear program. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and National Security, in communication with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, agreed to help on Afghan issues, including sharing information regarding potential attacks. CSIS Director Jim Judd had confided, however, that he had not figured out what they were up to, since it is clear that Iranians want ISAF to bleed slowly. According to a cable sent from the U.S. Embassy in Baku, Azerbaijan in 2009, there is a widespread rumor that many Iranians in Baku conduct illicit activities, and that these activities are tied to the Iranian regime. These activities include sanctions busting, money laundering, obtaining spare parts, equipment, and revenue generation for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and management of narcotics trafficking originating from Iran. The cable mentions that many Iranians residing in Baku from different backgrounds, including students, business figures, and human rights activists, are involved in these activities. Ireland. A 2006 memo on Ireland featured when on December 1st, 2010, it was revealed that American diplomats discussed the Irish government's attempts to oppose American use of Shannon Airport before Ireland's 2007 general election. After this release, Amnesty International asked the Irish government to tighten its legislation to counter the use of Irish airspace by the Americans. Colm O'Gorman, the organization's executive director in Ireland, observed that concerns expressed by Irish citizens over the misuse of the airport by the Americans was a problem to be managed rather than something to be taken seriously. According to a 2006 diplomatic cable sent from the U.S. Embassy in Ireland, the Irish government has informally begun to place constraints on U.S. military transits in Shannon Airport. The Irish government attempted to limit the transfer of weapons from the U.S. to Israel via the Shannon Airport. James C. Kenny, U.S. ambassador to Ireland at the time, said Irish officials were warned that the U.S. could use other airports if the policy continued. Israel! Lots of stuff about Israel. Israel was ready to attack a nuclear-armed Iran and saw 2010 as a pivotal year. In August 2007, Israeli Mossad chief Meir Dagan suggested to the U.S. to make use of local fringe groups to try and topple the Iranian regime. WikiLeaks documents also suggest that Dagan denied plans to attack a Syrian nuclear facility just 2 months before an attack actually happened. Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak consulted with Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and asked if they could take over control of Gaza Strip after expected Israeli victory during Operation Cast Lead, but went with refusal. In a conversation with the United States House of Representatives U.S. Congressman Gary Ackerman in 2007, Netanyahu said Shimon Peres had admitted to him that the Oslo peace process he helped initiate was based on mistaken premise. Netanyahu said Peres had told him the European and U.S. assistance to the Palestinian Authority had established a bloated bureaucracy with PA employees looking to the international community to meet their payroll. In the same document, Netanyahu described Kadima as a fake party and referred to the Second Lebanon War as stupid and criticized the approach of Ehud Olmert's policies towards the conflict. In one document from 2007, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was opposition leader at the time, describes the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas as a nice man who means well, and urges Washington to focus on toppling Hamas through an economic squeeze, saying it would be easier to weaken Hamas than to strengthen Abbas. In 2008, U.S. diplomats in the Middle East to secretly collect information on the Palestinian leaders and closely monitor Israeli military and telecommunication capabilities. One State Department directive orders U.S. diplomats to report on Israeli military tactics, techniques, and procedures dealing with conventional and unconventional counterinsurgency operations. According to a cable from U.S. from the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. Benjamin Netanyahu supports the concept of land swaps with the Palestinian Authority and does not want to govern the West Bank and Gaza, but rather to stop attacks from being launched from there. Netanyahu was described by Louis G. Moreno in One Cable. Netanyahu warned that when Israel left Lebanon, it created a first Iranian base. That when it left Gaza, it created a second Iranian base, and if Israel promised a third retreat from the West Bank, it could see the same results. There were three options, according to Netanyahu: withdrawing to the 1967 borders, that would get terror not peace; doing nothing, just as bad; or rapidly building a pyramid from the ground up. Netanyahu suggested a rapid move to develop the West Bank economically, including unclogging bureaucratic bottlenecks. Mossad Director Meir Dagan told American diplomat Francis Fragos Townsend that nothing will be achieved in the peace process, according to a secret cable in the U.S. Embassy by Tel Aviv to the State Department. During the 2-hour meeting, Dagan told Townsend that the Palestinian Authority, President Mahmoud Abbas, would likely move to Qatar and join his mysteriously wealthy son there, in the event Hamas took over the West Bank. In the same cable, Dagan was recorded using Saudi Foreign Minister Saud bin Faisal of playing a very negative role and characterized Qatar as a real problem, accusing its leader Sheikh Hamid bin Khalifa Al Thani of annoying everyone. It was also suggested the U.S. should move its bases, links to Al Udeid Air Base, out of Qatar. In 2007, Tzipi Livni said she doubted that a final status agreement could be reached with Abbas, and therefore the emphasis should be on reforming Fatah so that it could beat Hamas at the polls. Italy. American officials voiced concerns over Berlusconi's extraordinary closeness to Putin, including lavish gifts, lucrative energy contracts, and a shoutery Russian-speaking Italian go-between. Diplomats consider him to be the mouthpiece of Putin in Europe. The Georgian ambassador in Rome has told American officials that Georgia believes Putin has promised Berlusconi a percentage of profits from any pipelines developed by Gazprom in coordination with the NESPA. Jordan. A document dated from April 2nd, 2009, shows then-President of the Jordanian Senate, Said Rafai, saying, "Bomb Iran or live with an Iranian bomb." Sanctions, carrots, incentives won't matter, in a conversation with U.S. Ambassador David Hale. According to the cable, while Rafai judged a military strike would have been catastrophic impact on the region, he nonetheless thought preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons would pay enough dividends to make it worth the risk. North Korea was behaving like a spoiled child, according to Chinese officials, who were prepared to accept the Korean unification under South Korean leadership. They estimated that they could cope with an influx of 300,000 North Korean refugees in the event of instability on the peninsula. The U.S. and South Korea are planning to reunite the two Koreas should the North ultimately collapse. Kuwait. Emir of Kuwait Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmad al-Jaber al-Sabah, referring to the Kuwaiti Guantanamo detainees, said, "You know better than I that we cannot deal with these people," the Guantanamo detainees. "I can't detain them. If I take their passports, they will sue to get them back. I can talk to you into next week about building a rehabilitation center, but it won't happen. We are not Saudi Arabia. We cannot isolate these people in desert camps or somewhere on an island. We cannot compel them to stay. If they are rotten, they are rotten, and the best thing to do is get rid of them. You picked them up in Afghanistan, you should drop them off in Afghanistan in the middle of the war zone." Pakistan. Grave fears in the U.S. and the UK over the security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. Since 2007, the U.S. has mounted a highly secret effort, so far unsuccessful, to remove from a Pakistani research reactor highly enriched uranium that the American officials fear could be diverted for use in an illicit nuclear device. In the words of U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan Ann W. Patterson, Pakistan had refused visits from American experts, while an official told her that if the local media got word of the fuel removal, they would certainly portray it as the United States taking Pakistan's nuclear weapons. In July 2009, Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces and the de facto defense chief, said Zazari was dirty but not dangerous, and that the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was dangerous but not dirty. This is Pakistan. Saudi King Abdullah called President Asif Ali Zardari of Pakistan the greatest obstacle to the country's process. "When the head is rotten," he said, "it affects the whole body." The Saudi government is concerned about Pakistan's political fragility and has worked hard through its embassy in Islamabad to bring the Pakistani factions together. Saudi relations with Pakistan have been strained because the Saudis do not trust Zardari and see him and the other Pakistani politicians as corrupt. A new rail link between Pakistan and Iran would be delayed for the time being, owing to poor conditions, low freight carrying capacity, and unrest from Baloch insurgents in the Balochistan region of both countries. Likewise, a natural gas pipeline agreement was also not to be accepted to be fruitful because the Pakistanis don't have enough money to pay for either the pipeline or the gas. According to U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, Israel is concerned for the well-being of former President Pervez Musharraf and wanted him to stay in power in 2007. The director of Mossad, Meir Dagan, remarked, "He is facing a serious problem with the militants. Pakistan's nuclear capability could end up in the hands of an Islamic regime." Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak described Pakistan as his private nightmare. He said that a potential Islamic extremist threat in Pakistan could wake up the world with everything changed. Barak also dismissed the idea of using force on Iran as a backfiring upon moderate Muslims in Pakistan, saying that while the two countries were interconnected, such a casual chain could not be established. In February 2010, a Turkish expert on South Asian affairs, Engin Soysal, told U.S. Undersecretary for Political Affairs William J. Burns that the Pakistani military was unhappy with Zardari, though it was not leaning to intervene. Soysal added that the senior official's patience may not be infinite, and that Zardari needs to increase the democratic legitimacy of parliament. Jasmine Zareni, a French specialist on Afghanistan-Pakistan affairs, said that the Pakistan Army Chief, General Ashfaq Parvez Kayani, had learned his lesson from Musharraf by staying behind the scenes and not interceding in the country's political situation. At the same time, Zaranini claimed that Kayani was manipulating the government into preventing policy change on Afghanistan's war-ridden tribal belt, and that he had a role in provoking controversy surrounding the contentious Kerry-Lugar bill. She also added that the West had not adequately targeted Pakistan's military to date on the Afghan Taliban hiding in Pakistan, saying militant leaders have been allowed to create networks funded by Gulf donors which were difficult to be defeated. The cables revealed that Vice President Biden told British Prime Minister Gordon Brown in 2009 that Mr. Zardari told him he feared an army coup and that the ISI dictator and Kayani will take me out. In a conversation with French Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner, U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates said he found it astonishing that President Zardari was still in power in 2010 and that the Pakistani military's operations against militants along the Afghan border had been striking. Kouchner concurred and added that political and military changes in Afghanistan were nothing short of a miracle. Gates and Kouchner also described the improving image of the Pakistan Army after its aggressive campaign against the insurgency. Fearing attempts on his life, Zardari told Ambassador Ann W. Patterson that in the event he were to be assassinated, he instructed his son, Bilawal Zardari Bhutto, who along with Zardari is the chairman of the co-chairman of the ruling Pakistan People's Party, to appoint his sister Faryal Talpur as president, and informed the United Arab Emirates of his intent to allow the family to continue living there. In November 2007, Maulana Fazal Rahman, a politician and leader of the Islamist party Jamiat Ulema-e-Islam, invited Patterson to a dinner in which he sought her support in becoming prime minister and expressed a desire to visit America. According to Raymond's personal aide, all important parties in Pakistan had to get the approval of the U.S. Referring to Raymond, Patterson mentioned, "He has made it clear, but he is still a significant number of votes are up for sale." The cables also highlighted the contradictions of other prominent figures. Amin Fahim, a Bhutto follower hoping to run for prime minister, led an Islamic religious party while enjoying an occasional Bloody Mary. According to a document from October 2009, head of Pakistan's intelligence agency Ahmad Shuja Pasha provided intelligence on potential terrorist attacks in India to Israel. According to the cable, he had been in direct touch with the Israelis on possible threats against Israeli targets in India. Kiani is described in the American interactions as direct, frank, and thoughtful, and has fond memories of time spent on a military training course in the U.S. He also smokes heavily and can be difficult to understand as he tends to mumble.